And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Happy New Year. This is our first MPF webinar of 2025. And Uri and I are going to saddle up and do them again through all of the calendar year. Uri, how are you?
I am doing great, John. How are you doing?
I am doing fine, Uri. Thank you for asking.
That's a
Um,
little scripted, John. That's a little scripted.
well,
Uri, how the heck are you?
I got to read my notes. You just sounded a little stiff there, gut
I
Freund. I'm
did.
trying
I
to
did.
loosen you
I
up.
fair.
You know,
Reasonable.
get a little something going to loosen up. We have a great set of guest speakers today. Ted Drattell and Drattell. I keep murdering your
You got
last
it,
name,
Drattell.
Ted.
That's correct.
And I specifically asked him how to pronounce his last name, and I screwed it up right at
You
the
did.
first chance I got. So, Ted, glad you're here. We'll learn a little bit more about what you do, the A Team Consulting Group, and joining us is Peter Berlowe, and Peter's the co-founder and co-managing partner of a firm down in Miami, and he's responsible for keeping an eye on the books and assuring that profitability is where it should be. Welcome,
That's
Peter.
that's right, John. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to join you and Uri, and I appreciate Ted inviting me to join in on this as well.
Well, thanks for
Pleasure to
taking
be
the
here.
time. Thanks for taking the time, sharing your perspective, and wearing your red tie. We were talking
It,
about your red tie.
it follows me wherever I go, John.
Looking
Peter,
sharp.
Peter, did you hear the responsibility that's been given to you from John? You are assuring the firm's profitability. Did you hear that?
I I
Yeah,
I
I
heard
I,
that.
I don't know if that's true, but I do my best.
I'm going to share the link to our recording with all your partners, Peter.
The profitability of a
And
solution.
we did one of these years ago, Uri, in the early days, and all the managing partner of this law firm in Ohio, I believe it was, is talking about all the great things their firm is doing, and in the next conference room is the executive committee howling. They're laughing at their managing partner as he talks about all the great things their firm is doing. It was funny. That was funny.
I bet that was.
But you know, we're trying to build a community where managing partners, law firm leaders can learn with and from each other, among people you know, people you trust, timely topics, great benchmarking data. And Uri and I, just by trial and error, have stumbled into a pretty good formula for these webinars. And they're fast. We share plenty of polling results, hear from experts, and from managing partners who are living in the trenches. And
Well, it's a
so
great
it's a great
opportunity for
formula.
me, and the program that's set up for today looks fantastic.
Well, I think we're going to guest broadcast in February live from Miami is what we're going to do, and hijack one of your conference rooms,
You are
and we're going
welcome
to.
to use it. We'll make sure the guaranteed sunny weather, and we'll make sure we have some good food for you. Maybe some stone
That's good.
crabs.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
You be careful, Peter, because I'll be down
Well,
there knocking on your door saying, "Where's the
I
stone
can't
crabs?"
wait. We love to host. We love to host people down here.
Well, we have a lot of fun with these as well. They're informal, we're unrehearsed, plenty of banter. We don't always agree on everything, but we hope you leave today's session with some good practical guidance and things you can put in play tomorrow or hell later this afternoon if you think they might make sense for your firm at this time. We're all focusing on profitability, and I think most equity partners appreciate that. So let's jump on in with our formal introduction. We are at the top of the hour, 2 o'clock, and here we go. Uri, welcome, my friend. This is our 56th program, believe it or not, since we started these. And
It is hard
our
to believe.
Uri and I do our co-moderation thing. So, Uri, anything you want to say before we get started?
2025 has begun. Great energy in this room and the other rooms we've held in the last week, and looking forward. Buckle your seatbelt. This is going to be a good one.
By the way, backing up, our topic, everyone knows, I would think, is strategies to improve your firm's profitability in 2025 and beyond. So we'll kind of overview the program and get started shortly. Welcome to Peter Berlowe and Ted Drattell, our guest speakers today. And Peter, let me start with you real quick. Tell us what you do and a little bit about your law firm.
Sure. I am a litigation attorney at Assouline and Berlowe. We handle all kinds of business issues from business disputes to intellectual property disputes like patent infringement, trademark infringement, copyright infringement. We deal with labor and employment law, just a broad mix of business issues. And we're happy to help any of our business clients deal with whatever comes their way.
Single office in beautiful Miami, Florida, correct?
We have an office in Miami, but we also have an office in Fort Lauderdale and an office in Boca Raton, Florida as well.
Wow, you're taking over the South Florida market, right?
Yes,
West Palm
absolutely.
Beach,
That's our goal.
Jupiter, marching on up the
We're gonna
coast. Good
we're,
for
we're
you.
gonna get all the way up to Tallahassee if we can.
Well, why stop there? Canada.
There you
Canada.
go. That's right.
Peter, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you
Ted,
very much.
say
I
hello.
appreciate it.
Hey
Our
John, how are
pleasure.
you? Hey Ari, how are you? So
Great.
nice to be here. I am in cloudy St. Pete Beach, Florida. So we are located both in New York City and Florida, but really are nationwide, and we specialize in fractional accounting for a few hundred clients that we service with a specialty in law firms.
And St.
Welcome,
Pete
Ted.
Beach. Folks, it's a little undiscovered part of Florida, St. Pete Beach, Paso Grill. If you ever have a chance to go down there, the sunsets are spectacular. The beaches are beautiful. I'm on the payroll for the Chamber of Commerce. So, no, that's a beautiful spot, both of you guys. And I'm in Atlanta, Uri's in Israel, and
I am.
together we meet. So, thanks, guys, again for doing this. Upcoming programs in 2025, couple of shameless plugs. We'll jump in. Our webinar series will continue strong. Uri, we were 100% in 2024. We didn't miss one. And sustaining these things is always a challenge, it seems, but we got a good rhythm going. Our signature event, folks, this is our big conference is in Atlanta, May 7 and 8. We'll gather about 120 managing partners from all over the U.S., Canada, a couple of foreign countries, and that's always a good show.
Hey, John, how's registration going for that?
Uri, well prompted. Thank you for asking. Registration's great. We've done a soft opening. We're still working on the agenda. It should be ready in the next couple of weeks, but we'll follow the same basic format. If you want to sneak in and register early, you can do so. And we're about 1/3 the way there in terms of
Great.
registration. So don't miss the boat if you want to come. We do a fall symposium in Chicago, a weekly newsletter. And if you come to one of our parties in person, we get you into a listserv, and we have monthly Zoom calls. And Uri, we just had a set of calls this week
Yes,
among
we did.
managing partners, and it's amazing the sharing, the camaraderie that these folks feel. And it's not easy leading lawyers, as we all know. There's a lot of change going on, and lawyers tend not to like change very much. We got a lot of stuff on our website, including an archive of all the webinars, the handouts, the recordings. It's all there for free. And we did some great topics last year. So take a gander, and if you see something you like, share it among your partners, and we try to be that resource. Today's program, strategies to improve profitability, 125 registered, 125. We do polling results we're going to share, live polling we're going to share, all this on demand on the website. And Uri, tell them how important the feedback is.
Yep. So at the end of today's session, when you close out this window, up in your browser will pop up your feedback. So please give us your feedback. That's all we ask. We don't charge for these, but we do want to keep providing targeted, meaningful programs to you and your peers. So give us your feedback. It's really short. What'd you like? What you'd like less? And what would you like to see in the future? So this helps us keep making better and better programs. So please give us your feedback.
Yeah, the topics especially. What are you
Yep.
interested in? And if you have recommendations for guest speakers, Uri and I think we're pretty smart, but we're not mind readers. So tell us what you want. We'll do our damnedest to deliver it. So feedback. We really appreciate that. Peter and Ted will appreciate it too. We'll pass that
Absolutely.
along to them. The good, the bad, the not so good. So give us your feedback. We kick off with polling questions. Go ahead, Uri.
Our first polling question for today, mostly for our guests, and we do sometimes get slightly different audiences. How many how many lawyers are with your firm? Give us a sense of the size of your firm. John is in Atlanta, Georgia. So, John knows how to count those votes. John, you'll count as many times as it needs to be done. You'll
Yeah,
do it, right?
we didn't have to recount this cycle, and so
I know.
I got some capacity to count votes in my system, and so people love the data we generate. And for Ted and for Peter, this will give you a sense of firm size as represented on today's call. We tend to hit mid law, the 25 to 100 lawyer firm is our sweet spot. And here you can see that reflected live in the audience polling. So there we go. Vote early, vote often, but don't try to vote twice, and don't commit voter fraud, because I'll come after you. Bringing on the data when you're registered. Well, this we asked back in November, Rory, and I thought it might be a
Yes.
good kind of place setter. And that's and Ted, you might be interested. I don't know if you saw this slide, but how closely does your firm monitor profitability? And we gave them these options, and only 33% said like a hawk. You surprised? What do you think of that,
Just from
Ted?
my experience, I think that, that matches, what I've seen. Most firms, kind of sort of pay attention. They're looking more at cash more so than anything. So I do think, if you have the resources and the time, you can look at it like a hawk because you can manage to a number, but if you don't manage it, it just kind of ends up wherever you end up.
Peter, where would you put
Yeah.
your firm among these
So
categories?
I think it depends on collections at any one time. When collections start to drop, we're at the fairly close, but we could do
Oh,
better.
then we take a good close look at
Yeah,
things.
but when the
Oh,
cash is flowing, we're at the hit or miss. I think when we're flush with cash, it becomes
Interesting.
less of a focus, and it's how can
Yes.
we focus more on our clients. But when the clients aren't paying, we start paying attention.
Hmm.
that's interesting. That's absolutely. And when the tide goes out, we start paying attention, to
Right.
what's going on. And
That's
you're right.
that's the
When
way
we're
it is.
flush and rolling in dough, hey, we tend to be a little more loosey goosey and maybe leave some money on the table. We asked the registrants when you signed up, the number one from this list. What's the top KPI your firm monitors? And Peter, I'll invite your comment to this,
Yeah,
and
I
then
think I
back to
think
you,
our
Ted.
firm we're in the collections section. Um, that's really that collections and maybe realization. Yeah, I say it's a small number here, but our realization is really it does have some level of importance to us. But collections is cash is king with us. If the cash is
Dollars in
flowing,
the
we're
door, right?
dollars in.
Ted, any surprise to this or comment to this?
I'm not surprised, other than maybe realization is so low, but just in my opinion, billable hours, then realization, then collections. Because if you don't have the first two, you don't have the collections.
We'll look at a slight variance to this question that puts a little more attention to realization, and that I think is an important KPI for sure. But firms are measuring the hours, the dollars in the door, origination, WIP and AR, and 5% came up with other. Not sure what that is, but we gave you a list, and here's what you said: focused on the dollars in the door and the hours it takes to generate those dollars. So most important top KPI. What I think might be missing here, and what we're seeing, I'm doing a speech for the ALA on this in latter part of May, and is the tension between culture and profitability. We ask, what's the one word to describe culture, and do a word cloud, and it's family, it's collegial, it's collaborative, it's country club, and now we're going to hone in on profitability and underperformance by client, by lawyer, by office. It may create some tensions to that, harmonious culture we're trying to build. And so be really deliberate about what you're doing, why you're doing it, because tampering with KPIs, what gets measured, gets attention here. Uh, Ted, I'll invite your comment. We asked folks on the call to rate their firm's finance team 1 to 5, 5 being really great, 1 being not so great. What do you think of this?
This doesn't match my experience. I think the fours and the fives are much higher than I see in real life, and it could be, um, just expectations sometimes are measured by what you're getting rather than by what you really should expect.
So
So
some false
you,
positives here in this data.
I think you get false positives here. I think you're getting a
Marie,
happy
what do you
report.
think? What do you think of
Yeah,
this
yeah,
rating of our CFOs?
I think Ted's on to something exactly right. In particular, when people meet Ted, they're going to hear all these great things that the position can do, and they suddenly don't like their CFOs quite as much. That's what I find. People are happy with who they have until you say, your person can do this, this, and this. They say, oh, I never thought about that. So it kind of realigns, I think, people's thinking when they hear what else is out there. And so I suspect people that meet with Ted and others like him, their eyes are opened. And today's group, I think, will be no different. We're going to talk a lot about what else can that team be doing, and people are going to be like, "Wow, we don't do that. We don't do that. Why don't we do that?" So I think it depends on your perspective.
It's a tough job, but if we want to hone in on profitability, it's an important role and an increasingly important role. The C-suite, the COO, the CFO, and getting really competent people in there that are going to help you run a more successful business-like operation. Peter, your thoughts on this graph we
Well,
see?
well, see, my thoughts are going to, like in our firm, none of us we're not executives by training. We're lawyers by training, or maybe they have some other background. But so we're always surprised to hear what else we could do. We don't think like a C-suite people. We think like lawyers that are running a business on the side. So I think it's great to get help out help into your company that can handle these executive functions that we as lawyers may have no training in whatsoever. And my background was in engineering. I'm good with numbers, but I don't know business. I've learned it on the fly from good other managing partners to people like Ted who have opened my eyes to a lot of issues. But you know, if you're just a lawyer and you have no business background, it's hard to do these things. It's not an
Yeah.
easy task.
My first job in house working, I'm not a lawyer, everybody knows, was working at Gunster in West Palm Beach. We had 80 lawyers, 27 equities, and a non-lawyer CEO. First, the term non-lawyer can be pretty offensive to those of us who aren't lawyers. Non-billable, non-equity. Let's get that non-terminology out of our vocabulary and recognize how important the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, and the C-suite is becoming to run a successful business operation. So there we have it, and it looks like right here, admit at least 33% that we don't have a lot of confidence in our finance team. And I agree with you, Ted. I think we have some false positives here. This is an important role. And guess what? You got to get your time in, Peter.
Yeah, got to get the time
Get
in
get your
above
time
us.
in. We'll talk about that. Profit driver, and what are you looking at to make more money? More hours, less expenses, a real bump up in our realization rates, because that can have huge impacts on the bottom line. We're going to bump our rates. We're going to do a better job at intake, or we're going to tighten up our billing and collections practices. And we gave you the choice, pick one, pretty even distribution among the top four. Ted, if you had to pick one profit driver from this list, what would it be and why?
I would say it's realization, which, one by a hair. And the reason I say that, it's the one that's paid, A, the least attention to, and B, it's just kind of accepted to cut time. And, you got to have a culture where you shouldn't be afraid to bill your clients, and you should charge for what you're worth. So I think if you pay attention to that number, which not all accounting systems necessarily track, I think you can drive the bottom line up just by paying attention to it.
Well, I think realization factors in your rates, your hours, your utilization, and it kind of factors all of those things. And if you can bump that up a couple of points, cha-ching. And
Hey,
most mid-law
so
we're seeing in the upper 80s when it comes to effective rates and collections against budget. So, Uri, comments on these profit drivers? Which one would you pick?
Yeah, I go with rate. We're going to talk a lot about around the edges today, but I think that at its essence for the firms, and there is diversity in rate among firms. Gosh, we know higher rates do better than lower rates. I mean, and then among higher rates, there's some that do even better than other higher rates. But if you're starting, and that's really the rate is the starting point, you're starting at a lower number, you're not going to make it up on volume. You're not going to be able to squeeze it out on realization. You have to have healthy rates. So I think it starts with healthy rates. Then we'll talk about how many hours you're doing at what realization rate. So that's the way I think of it.
Peter, comments before we move on to kind of our first
Sure. Like,
major
so to
topic
me,
we're going to talk about?
realization and billing and collections are the top two. And I kind of feel like when our realization is lower, we get more focused on billing and collections. So lower realizations force us to focus on billing and collections. It's almost out of desperation. But when realization is really higher, we're not so worried about billing and collections. So I think part of it is for us. It's like for our size firm, cash flow is important and hours are important. That they all drive each other. So picking one is hard, but between realization and billing and collections, I think it's probably realization is probably the big important number most of the
Hey,
time.
can I just jump
I
in there
will
for one?
assert. Go ahead,
If I could
Uri, and
just
then
jump in,
I
that
want to make an observation.
we've just had a question in the question box, and we've gotten a few questions. Feel free to throw them in there. Can Ted define realization just for our group? We've gotten the requests. Define realization for our community.
so there's really two types of realization. There's billing realization. So if you have $100 in billable time and you bill $90, your realization is 90%.
Hmm.
If you collect $80 of that $100, that's collection realization. You collected, your realization on that is 80%.
See, I think it factors in, against budget. We're budgeting you to work 100 hours at $100 an hour. And you've got your utilization, which is how many hours you hit of that 100. And then you factor in the rates against what we budgeted. And that leads us to your realization, which I think is the profit driver. I don't think most rank and file, as the questions we had to the chat box, Uri,
Yep.
really understand, these drivers and law firm economics 101 and how we can really churn up our profitability by honing in on a few KPIs that will have that impactful difference.
That's a
So
talk in and of itself, John. Law firm economics 101.
it
Just
is. It's a
starting with
good
the
topic.
basics.
It's a good topic for a firm retreat. And I think a lot of firms try to squeeze out the profits by managing expenses. But I think
Yes.
the profits are on the top line, the rates, the
Yep.
hours, and your ability to collect on those rates and hours.
I mean, just to put it in
Uh,
perspective, John, if you're a $10 million firm and you're at 80%, we'll call it collection realization, but you can get that to 82, that's $200,000. That's big.
Huge.
That's a big number.
Oh, you bump the average hourly rate among all your timekeepers $5 an hour. Whoa. Get them to work and bill one more hour per week. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but man, its impact on the bottom line is incredible. Now, what we've done is divided our topics, working with Peter and Ted, into kind of three main areas. We'll spend about 10, 12 minutes on each one. We got some polling questions in the mix. And the first question Ted wanted to talk about is the 5 key performance indicators, the 5 KPIs. We've already talked about some of them. And for the
So
sake of polling, let
let's
me,
ask which one.
Uri, yeah, you were going to lead us on this, and I'm sorry, you're going to set
Yeah.
up our polling questions.
Yeah, we're gonna ask two polling questions here related to hours. So, what is your firm's billable hour expectation for associates? So, tell us what's the firm's billable hour expectation. Do not worry, we're not going to ask you what they actually do. But for right now, we just want to know their expectation for associates. Less than 1,600, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, or more than 1,900. What do you think we're going to see, Peter? You've been doing this a long time. What do you think we're going to say for associates at mid-sized law firms?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this going, boy, our associates don't work enough. No, but you know what? Our associates, they actually do work very hard, and they do spend a lot of time trying to generate cases. So I'm not surprised at these numbers from seeing what big firms do
Yep.
require and what medium firms require. But I think a lot of it goes to culture and what's the culture of your particular firm. Like John was saying, our firm's like family. We use that word a lot at our firm. We're a family.
Mm.
We focus on lifestyle. We're not so much focused on the high salaries, but you're going to have a lot of freedom and a lot. You're not going to be working every weekend. So part of it goes to your firm culture. I'm kind of surprised to see numbers so low. Not so many in the 1800 to 1899 section,
Yeah,
because I know back when I worked at Big Law, we
Back.
commonly had over 2,400 hours.
20,
So I'm thinking,
24. Wow. Yeah,
So,
we've seen this number
John.
slide some more. And this is lower than I think we've ever seen it, Uri, as we ask this
Yes.
question in various formats. We've seen a nice bell curve around 1,800 post
right.
COVID,
Mhm.
1,800. But here we see this average is less than that among
Yep.
today's registrants.
Yes. And John, our next question is, what is the billing expectations? John, go
I'm
forward.
getting it. I'm getting it.
Okay.
Hang on.
Our
Hang
billing
on.
expectation
Stop
for your
yelling at me, Uri.
for equity partners. What is your firm's billable expectation for equity partners? And here too, we are not going to follow up with how many do you actually do. So give us the truth. That'll help us here.
This is
What is the firm?
anonymous. We can't. We're not smart enough to track it back to who said what. So this is anonymous, and looking at the votes coming in as we do here in Atlanta, and waiting for about a 70% participation rate. And let's close the poll and share this billable hour expectation equity partners. Comments, Mr. Drattell.
It matches my real view of it. Generally, equity partners are the people bringing in the work, so the billable hour expectation is going to be lower.
Peter.
Okay.
I'm kind of shocked at how many lawyers, equity partners, have numbers higher than 1,600. I would have thought everybody would have been less than 1,600. I think it takes a lot to be a rainmaker, a lot of schmoozing, and my experience is it's usually less than 1,600. But so I'm surprised at how many are above.
Mr. Gutfreund.
Well, this is expectation. I think this is a little aspirational. This is what we expect. I think Peter's pretty spot on. I think most do less. I think it's a hybrid and a rare equity partner that's billing 1,800 and a rainmaker. I mean, it's just you see it, but it's rare. That is rare.
My observation working with mid-sized firms is the variance. We have pretty clear
Yeah.
expectations for the associates and the income partners. A lot more variance among the
Mhm.
equity partners. And some insurance defense firms, workers' comp defense firms, you see those equity partners cranking out 1,800, 2,100, often more than the associates. Where I would argue more of their time should be spent training, developing business, doing the leadership, more firm building activities, less grinding, and a little more, finding and leading and mentoring. But it is what it is for what it's worth. There's no perfect system, no magic formula. But that might give you a sense of where the firms today are in terms of billable hour expectation for associates. Am I back to the
John,
screen, Uri? Did I do this right?
You went in the wrong direction, but go forward one more. And what's the
Oh, yeah.
question of the day? Oh yeah, John, this is yours. This is
Yeah,
big
we've been
topic of
asking
yours.
this quite a bit this
Mhm.
latter part of last year and early this year. If you've got partners reluctant to raise rates, this might be some nice data to present. So if you would, what is your, did you implement rate increases in 2025 is the way we phrased the question. Yes, by more than 10%, on down to flat. So among these five choices, where'd you go with rate increases in 2025? Ted, you care to offer a prediction?
I'm not surprised at all by these results. I think they're realistic between inflation, pressure on comp. It makes total sense that 4 to 6% would be the median here.
It's very consistent with what we've seen. I think, Uri, we've asked this 4 or 5 times in different places, and this is very consistent, 5, 6%. What I always am surprised by is 12%, 10% or more. We saw a lot of aggressive during the inflationary period. Firms, I think, got pretty aggressive as their expenses rose. Here, things have flattened out a little bit, but it looks like firms continue to be pretty aggressive for their rate setting in 2025. Peter, what did you guys do at your firm?
I think we did more than 10%, but I think most of Miami did as well. I think Miami was an aggressive market on the rates. So we matched the market.
Miami is a hot market, isn't it? I mean,
It,
some of the numbers I've heard are eye-popping now for some of the partner rates in Miami. I mean,
yes,
New York
we're
rates, what
we're slowly approaching New York numbers
we
for
got
rates.
a lot of New York lawyers moving to Florida too, I
That's
think.
right.
Post
That
COVID,
might.
we can pull this off. We don't have to go into Manhattan every day, you
I
know.
think that's what's affecting the rate changes in Miami is how many New York or I would say Northeast attorneys are moving to South Florida.
Ted, you put together this slide for us. It's
Walk
kind of
us.
top five to maybe keep in mind.
Yep. Yep. Again, what I was saying before, the revenue by lawyer is really driven by their billable hour utilization, by their realization, and just, how many hours they have multiplied by the rate. So it's really kind of like an assembly line that all work together. But if something's out of whack, it's going to affect your bottom line. And I like to
And
monitor them, especially the average effective rate, because if people are discounting, obviously it affects the realization and ultimately affects what you're charging.
Ted,
Revenue per lawyer
maybe,
is a good number, I think.
yeah, and we've already talked about the utilization, or realization rather, a little. Talk to us about the effective rate, Ted, and how a firm like Peter would calculate their effective rate, monitor their effective rate, and use that information for decisions in the firm.
Okay, so I'm going to answer it backwards.
Okay.
So, like in my firm, I monitor the average effective rate like a hawk because I know what my average increase is. I want to see that, my average as I go along during the year is at least at that increase or better, depending upon, the mix of work that I do. So I consider that a highly critical number because if it's below that, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I consider that a very important KPI. Now, the other question was utilization. So if somebody has available, like in our shop, it's similar. We're doing accounting work.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody has available 2,040 hours roughly. So I want to measure their utilization against that, how many billable hours they had divided by what they had available. Obviously, I know they have non-billable time. I've already factored
Mm-hmm.
in their PTO. So I've got a benchmark number that I want to hit. And, you know, like anything else, you got to monitor it because if you don't, people do what you inspect, not what you expect. So, sharing that data is so important, but also explaining what it means because, if they don't understand what billable hour utilization is, then they can't relate to it. They can't change their behavior.
And I've
Yeah.
got a
And
question.
Peter, I was
How
just
does
going
that
to ask
affect?
you. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, how does that affect in a firm like ours where we've got probably 3/4 of our attorneys are billing at billable hourly rates, but the other quarter of our attorneys are doing flat fee transactional work, like maybe preparing patent applications or trademark applications, where we have a set, all their work is a transactional and it's always fixed rate. Should we be looking at effective hourly rate or segregate the litigators from the transactional attorneys? How do we deal with that? Or how would a firm like us deal with that?
I would still apply the hours to come up to the effective rate, because
Yeah,
it's
I'm
the
with Ted.
way
I would
you'll make sure
shadow
you're
bill that.
profitable.
Track it.
Shadow bill that, and if you're shortchanging yourself on the flat fee, you need to adjust that. But shadow bill it to make sure that flat fee, fixed fee work is in fact profitable.
Right.
So that's what
And,
I would recommend. Shadow bill.
and,
John,
and, and
John, when you look at this list, what other KPIs would you add to a
Well,
firm who's,
Steve
managing their
Maybe,
KPIs?
Steve Maybe out of Canada, Nova Scotia, has been on our faculty for a lot. He wrote a book on law firm KPIs. I love it. It's oriented toward Canadian firms, so it spells hours, differently than we do, whatever. But I think, usually we think of financial KPIs, kind of a snapshot in time, how we're performing financially. Uh, there's no right or wrong set of KPIs. It's what you all as a firm want to monitor, measure, reward. What gets monitored gets done. Peter Drucker, one of the leading business authors of our time. So, what are you measuring? What are you tracking? That will tend to get done. Where's cross selling on this list? If we want to see more cross selling, let's find ways to measure it, reward it, celebrate it. I think as well, I encourage firms to look at longer term KPIs like associate retention, like client satisfaction, employee satisfaction. They're a little more hard to measure,
Yeah.
but they really are more long term indices of your firm's success, 3-4 years down the road. So I think client satisfaction is an interesting KPI to take a look at. What do you want to measure, reward? Find ways to do that as objectively as you can, and kind of share and celebrate those behaviors and financially reward them. Otherwise, we're all playing for my numbers, my hours, my collections, my client. If we heavily reward origination credit for life, not exactly conducive to sharing and transition at succession time. Peter, your comments on KPIs, anything missing here, anything your firm's rewarding that you think
Well,
generates some good behaviors?
well, to us, the one thing that would be missing from this list is really how the hours that are actually collected. A lot of these numbers look at, well, what's been billed, but we focus more on what's collected because that's, like I said, cash in the door.
Yep.
We can have we have attorneys that bill crazy numbers of hours. They work hard, they're doing the work, but at the end of the day, the clients ask for a discount. So the billed hours don't necessarily really mean anything at the end of the day if we're going to give a 20% discount. What really matters and what is the collected realization as opposed to the billed
Yep.
realization to us. So I would say somehow bringing in a KPI that brings in collections would be really important to us. So I guess it would be the
Dollars.
collected realization rate.
I had a client a long time ago, and they measured their equity partner compensation on hours billed was a big indicator. So guess what happened in November and December? Well, a lot of hours got billed, and they had to claw a lot of that back. But the comp was based upon the bills you had out the door. Come on, it incensed some pretty perverse behaviors, and lawyers will play it, if they think they can. Moving on to hygiene. And first, Peter, you asked when we had our dress rehearsal on Monday, well, what is that exactly? Peter, what's hygiene?
So, I mean, hygiene. It looks like uh, for us, it's keeping track of your budget, following up on that, and making sure that your revenues and expenses are meeting your projections. Um, I thought an important issue that Ted had brought up was this creating a culture of timely timekeeping. The hardest thing for us to deal with, and I'll admit I hate doing it, is keeping track of my time. But if the time's not in, the bills don't go out. And if one person on a lawyer team doesn't get their time in, well,
Oh,
everybody's time is not getting billed because the one person didn't get their time in. So I think good hygiene is getting that timekeeping in, and getting the billing in, and so that the billing department can get the bill out the door. Um, Collections is make keeping up with collections. Don't let clients go a long time without paying their bills. Staying up on top of them. Let them know when they're late. Let them ask them, is there something we can do to help you get us paid? Do you need us to call us? Do you need us to send us a link to to our billing, to our collection software so you can pay by credit card? All that, having systems in place to make sure that you can get the bills out and get the bills paid is just, that's good hygiene.
Yeah, I call it, basic blocking and tackling. If you're working the billable hour, get it right.
Right.
Uh, Ted, your comments about hygiene and kind of the fundamentals of profitability.
Sure. To me, it all starts with timekeeping. And one story I want to share real quickly. So we had a firm had a timekeeping issue. So, we were talking about the carrot versus the stick. And what we did is we created a contest, a weekly contest of teams to get their time in. And if people got their time in, each time people got their time in and they closed it, they got a point. And so there was a weekly winner, a monthly winner, and then an annual winner. And it really made a difference. I mean, you had associates bothering partners about getting their time in, which sometimes created, a little excitement, but it worked. And, I would say they did it for, 3 or 4 years, and it really helped create that culture. And it just,
Gamification in a way, gamification of stuff.
exactly
I,
right.
I, I share the story at a defense firm down in Miami, your neck of the woods, Peter, years ago, and the administrator, I think his title was COO, might have been CFO, Friday afternoons would walk around the office with a stack of crisp 50s. And if your time was in the system at the end of the day on Friday, you got a nice crisp 50. Have a nice weekend. Not a whole lot of money, but very visible, very symbolic. And I'll be damned if it didn't get these associates to put their time in by the end of the week. Uh, Now they go with crisp 100s. It works. Here's a bugaboo question we often ask. Come on, folks. I only see about 50% of you voting here. And this is, how frequently does your firm expect the time to be entered into the system? Contemporaneously, at the end of the day is okay. Weekly, or longer than that. Peter, at your firm, what's your policy? What's your expectation about time entry?
I think the expectation is daily. The realization is monthly. People, it's people put it off. I think most people keep contemporaneous notes next to them. They have that pad of paper they're writing on.
okay.
But
What a
we have a
charming
separate
practice,
software.
a pad of paper. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a separate software system, and I know I do it. I keep the pad of paper next to me, and then I get it typed into these emails, and then the emails go to my assistant, and she types it into the software because I can't stand handling it. But we have attorneys that are great at it. They go straight to the software. They do it themselves, and God bless them. It's fantastic. But then you have people like me that are
Discipline.
just so old fashioned, and just hate keeping track of their time, that I still rely on the pad of paper. So I like that the polling question is talking about the expectation, but I think a separate polling question is, how often are these expectations met?
Well, that's
I'd
that's
love to
another
know
that's
that.
another question.
Yeah,
And what are the consequences, if any, if you can't
consequences.
get your time in? Oh, you get a raise. I'd be all over your ass if I were your partner, Peter.
Oh my, he is. He is. It's
Um,
There is so much out there on this topic. We have clients who say, you know what? This is your gosh darn job. I don't need to go around and give those crispy 50s, but you know what? I have to do it. Have to do it. Have to do it. I have one firm who says there's a rule about putting in your time, which has to be done weekly. There's only one excuse, and that's death. Your own. Your own. The managing partner's
Ooh.
on that, and you have to put your time in it. And that's a culture. That's a culture. It's either
And do they have
acceptable
a
or it's not.
guillotine in the reception area? Is that how that works? Or how, I
Well,
mean,
but
that's
Uri, come on, we're family. We're family.
Exactly.
we're
Can I have a
family. I'm
Well,
little?
busy. I'm
that's
busy. I
right,
gotta go
Peter.
fishing on Friday.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you don't put your time in, and I'd love for people to put in, I see Don just put in $15 daily bonus for getting the minimum amount of time in per day, paid quarterly. That's what Don said in the questions here. That's a
15.
great idea.
That's Corky, our friend in
15.
Colorado.
It is. It is. Good idea, Don. It gets people to put it in. It's token, but it works. By the way, in that firm, speaking about family, he, if it's a partner, and you can only do this with partners, he'll hold their draw until they
Yeah.
put their time in. And guess who's going to bug that partner more than the managing partner? Their
The
spouse.
spouse.
Where's the
Exactly.
money? So family
Exactly.
gets in on that, Peter. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, carrots, sticks, whatever.
Yep.
Boy, you got to get the time in. Every study we read says if you don't track contemporaneously, you're shortchanging yourself. And
15
there's
to
so many
20%.
exactly. And at the end of the week, it's double that, right? And then you start writing fiction. If you're trying to recreate your month, and there's so many tools out there that'll mine your emails and prompt you, sure you want to bill for that or that phone call, and just prompt you for all the money you've left on the table because you haven't tracked your time contemporaneously. I think, training your associates, time tracking skills, they don't necessarily learn that in law school, but boy, in private practice, this is a really important discipline, the time tracking. We could talk about this. We could do a program on this, Uri,
Yep.
rewards, truth or consequences around timekeeping practices. But
Yes.
there it is. Daily is the expectation for more than half. Um, our friend Jacqueline Newman in New York, she runs a matrimonial firm in New York, and she's the founder and the CEO, and it's just non-negotiable. 1800, end of the day, non-negotiable. If you can't handle that, that's a problem, and you only have to call it out a few times. And if you can't handle it, you're not going to be successful at her law firm. Period. End of story. Want to be a family, but there's certain obligations the family members have to one another and to the family. To show up for dinner and brush your teeth, whatever it is. Basic hygiene, right, Ted?
Give you an offer you can't
Absolutely.
refuse.
So always an interesting conversation around the expectation for time entry. I'm looking at the time. We have 15 minutes left, so we're doing a pretty good job here. Anything else on hygiene, Ted?
Just real quick, I think tracking your budget, whether it's revenue, expenses, productivity, I think is key. Doing that monthly is
Oh, lo
just
and
is
behold.
so important.
This is just kind of a yes or no, folks. Are you really keeping a watchful eye on your actual versus budgeted uh, projections? Yes or no? Peter, you said when times are good, we tend to lose focus on this stuff.
Well, we know what our expenses are, and I religiously, if an typical expense changes, I have a chart, an Excel spreadsheet. I
Hmm.
go to that Excel spreadsheet and put in the new price of that or the expense for that budgeted item, and I do track it. That's one thing I do, but it's my little pet peeve, and I try and track it. But I think I think Uri said earlier, when you raise that your rates to a proper amount, the expenses don't really matter so much.
That's right.
The rates become super important and really should take precedent over the expense. It's an interesting issue, but I mean, I still focus on it because I'm not a business person, but I know I better get my expenses paid. I got to take care of that first, and then comes profit.
And this is what a good CFO
Mhm.
does. Ted, are we getting a false positive here?
It might be a little high, but I think more importantly is what Peter was just saying is really managing the top line if you spend as much time managing the top line as you do the expenses, you'd be well ahead.
Let's move to the CFO. If you have one, a lot of firms will outsource this, go to fractional CFOs. We got bookkeepers and such, but a real CFO who's got a seat at the table, who's pushing your firm to perform, who's calling out the chronic underperformance, the unprofitable clients, encouraging your firm to act on this. Ted, you wanted to provide top 5 questions. There's your CFO. He looks pretty sharp. He's got glasses and everything. And doesn't he? He's keeping an eye on the budget here. To managing partners, the 5 questions to make sure your CFO, be it an in-house individual or a fractional or outsourced CFO, talk to us about the questions you need to pestering your CFO with on a regular basis.
Sure. With strategic planning and goal setting, does our budget align with our goals? Do we have a plan to actually achieve that budget? Because, so many times I see people put the numbers down on a piece of paper, but there's no plan on actually how to achieve it. So I think that's obviously critical, especially as you begin the year. We talked about, profitability, the biggest drivers of profitability and ways to maximize revenue and minimize expenses. The next couple really are just, fraud is, really big these days. Whether it's getting fake bills, I see it in clients all the time. Somebody's email got hacked, and the next thing you know, you're getting an email that says, "Oh, my bank account changed." Well, you need a process to make sure that that's legitimate. Are you sending wire transfers, whether they're for payments or for trust accounts? Are you verifying, those instructions that got emailed to you? I mean, it sounds like basic stuff, but what happens is when people get busy, they let it go by the wayside and they just do what's easiest and they send out a payment. And the next thing you know, they got hit. And unfortunately, I do see that. And then,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, you go, Ted.
No, I was just going to move on to long-term planning. So obviously, a lot of things what we've been talking about are short-term in the moment, but it really helps to have a 3-year or a 5-year roadmap just to see where you're going. And obviously, you can adjust it as you go along. But one of my favorite Yogi Berra-isms is if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up someplace else. And having a plan and having a just a sense of where you want to be, I think is critical to success and critical to being profitable, critical to really maximizing your distributions.
Peter, is there any questions not on this list that you hit your CFO with pretty routinely?
So we don't have a CFO. So I think my question is, why don't we have a CFO? I I think it's probably, just lack of business vision that we don't have a CFO. We're a bunch of lawyers trying to be lawyers and we're playing business. I think if we really want this to be a successful business, we probably should have a CFO. So my first question is why don't we have somebody working on strategic planning and goal setting, profitability and cash flow? Why am I in the middle of as a lawyer? Why am I in the middle of this? I don't belong here. I should be focused on the law, the practice of law, and have executives doing these things.
What I hear, Peter, on that is we can't afford a CFO. That's big law stuff. We can't afford
Yes,
this C-suite. And I say you can't afford not to
not to.
have this C-suite. These are important players in your long-term success. And maybe it's not a full-time $400,000 a year CFO, but maybe a COO that has an MBA accounting background, who gets paid as much as the average equity partner, who has a voice in decision making, not an owner, or maybe in Arizona or Utah. That non-attorney frequently can be an owner, but boy, give these people a spot on your team. Hear what they have to say. Respond. They're trying to help you make more money and be a more cohesive, sustainable enterprise. And I think a lot of little firms, no, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. Ted, you do fractional CFOs, and we're seeing
Right,
more and more of that with marketing
right.
people and IT people. We can't afford the $400,000 a year person, but we can afford 2 days a month, or some part of that, an experienced person
Absolutely.
who's going to bust your chops a little bit.
Absolutely. But also like the way we work, a lot of times the CFO doesn't have to actually do the work. They're more coming up with the concepts and they have their
Right.
team do the work. So
Right.
that
The
really keeps
reports and the general, KPIs we want to track, and more
the fee down.
oversight. Yeah. Uri, we've seen some of the lawyers in your groups. One firm in New York there, a litigation boutique, hired a non-lawyer CEO, and boy, is she making a difference. They let her do the dirty work, all the unfun stuff, because we want to like each other, our culture. God, I can't be rough on my partner who can't get his time in, but let's sick the hatchet CEO on him.
Yeah, I see this in a slightly different way, which is instead of important questions to ask your CFO, and I'll turn it to the group, what are the important questions that your CFO should be asking you?
Yeah, there you
Certainly
go.
that at the highest level, they can be driving your strategy, your
Yeah,
goal setting. They can be driving that.
yeah.
John, you were just alluding to this C-suite revolution. We've called it this in the past. I mean, what should they be doing? What questions should they be driving, and where can they drive? Those I think are the top
Yeah.
CFOs and
Well, and they
COOs.
can only do as much as the equity partners of the firm will allow them to do.
Yeah,
If the equity partners don't want to hear, hey, how come your time's not in again this week, Peter? The associates are noticing it's not okay, and pushing
great.
you to get that time in if it's so damn important. Um, you know, Nobody said it was a popularity contest leading lawyers, but CFOs, CEOs can make huge impacts on your bottom line if you let them. Ted, anything else on questions to ask your CFO, Peter, Uri, before we kind of move toward the door here?
I would just say technology, what technology changes can be made to become more efficient, to provide more information. There's so many web-based products out there that really make a difference. And, I'd be looking at those, regularly and asking my CFO, hey, what should we be considering? Doesn't mean you have to do it, but start thinking about it, plan for it, budget for it. Obviously, change sometimes takes time and you've got to prepare for it.
This is our final polling question, which is your CFO looking at the fraud situation. And here's I've got about 60% of our votes here. And here's what we got.
Yeah.
Fraud, boy, clicking on the wrong stuff, sending money
Yep.
places it shouldn't be going. Boy, we're only going to see more and more of it. And the internet's scary, and so's Chat GPT. So, fraud ongoing. So, what's a firm leader to do? Our closing slide here, and guidance, that culture, profitability, kind of balance, being the family firm that makes a lot of money. Okay. What are the right KPIs for your law firm? Take a look at Steve Baby's book, Law Firm KPI book. I think he's got it online for free. I'll put it in our handout materials that we'll send you, in fact. And it's just got a whole bunch of things you might want to consider looking at. And not every KPI on the planet, just a handful that are going to be impactful, that are going to drive behavior. Uri, you and I think, like transparency.
Yes.
Ted, I'm assuming you would advise lots of transparency around the numbers and
Absolutely.
the performance
Absolutely.
reports and all those good things. Peter, you guys a pretty transparent shop?
Yes, we are.
Cool. I think that
Absolutely.
engages your income partners, your associates, you know. So
Absolutely.
often the equity partners hide everything and expect you to, go along with the program.
But I will
The
say
rates,
we do show those expenses that we have, and everybody's always surprised at how much the expenses are. And I'm surprised that they're surprised. They seem to not have this intuition that yeah, it actually costs money to make money. Um,
well, they don't teach it in law school.
right.
Average overhead per timekeeper, overhead per lawyer, whatever it is. What is it, 150,000, 180,000?
Mhm.
About
I think
180,
is,
about 100 for us. It's about 180 to 100, 200, depending on what their salary is.
yeah. They don't know that. I mean, they don't know that. They look at their rates and their hours, and they forget about the office space and the insurance and the
Right.
and the technology and the rest of it takes and all the support staff you enjoy. You know,
Right.
that ain't free. The comp system, I think, we encourage firms, don't wait until we're fighting. Take a look at your comp system. What are you measuring, rewarding? Is it origination? Is it cross selling? Is it mentoring associates? Does non billable time count for much of anything? What about your time as a managing partner? How does that get rewarded? Because you're probably investing a lot of it in the leadership role. So, Uri, any other guidance to managing partners on this topic we've been discussing today?
Yeah, I would just tie in, and I think people will sometimes ask us, we're talking about profitability. Why are you talking about comp system? Why are you talking about transparency? And I think the one word that summarizes that is alignment. It's alignment. Your people know what you're wanting to do. We have accountability of shared goals, and then we incentivize. That's what a comp system's supposed to be, right, John? You design them, don't you, John? It's supposed to go with alignment what your strategy is. So it all comes together, and I think that
I,
that
I
was a good slide. It ties it all
I think
together.
it should measure and reward the desired behaviors and
Bingo.
contributions you're looking for. Associates, we want you to grind it out, hone your legal skills. As you move up to senior associate, how you invest your time might shift a little bit to more business development activities, these sorts of things. And then now we're at income partner. And I think your contributions change. I mean, you can be a grinder for life, uh, you know. But if you really want to make the big bucks and have an impact, uh, you know, leadership and business development and mentoring talent are really, really important. Uh, Peter, anything we left off the list, advice you would give a managing partner?
I think the biggest advice I can give you is have good partners around you, have good people around you, and rely on them. Be able to delegate, and if you've got good people and you have the willingness to delegate, you can succeed.
Ted, give you the last shot. Your guidance for
Yeah,
managing partners on our profitability improvement for the year.
I would also, don't be afraid to ask questions of your subject matter experts, whether it's, somebody like you, like Yuri, just people that are your advisors. Ask them, what other firms are doing, the successful ones. What practices can you consider adopting that, can affect the bottom line.
Well, we throw out so much data, and what are other firms doing? You're a leader, you want to initiate change, implement a new policy, and invariably among the first questions you'll get from your skeptical partners is, well, who else is doing that? And
Absolutely.
we try to give you that ammunition to lead change, and it's happening all around us. Speaking of change, and then our time is up. I've been partnering with a fellow named Tony DeSimone out of Buffalo, New York. We're building an AI community for managing partners of smaller and mid-sized law firms to help you figure it out. We're all trying to figure this out, and there's a lot coming at us. It's happening fast. So we're building a community of people you know and trust, and we do a webinar every other month. It kind of follows our formula here, Uri. I kind of based it off this. We're doing Zoom calls. Tony DeSimone kicks out a Tuesday tip every Tuesday morning, trying to help managing partners wade through all these issues. We were comparing notes on co-counsel, which is a Thomson Reuters offering. And hey, are
Good
you
stuff.
talking to your reps? What are they telling you? Are they soft on the rates and stuff? And boy, it's amazing to pick up what people are doing and helping each other try to figure it out, because we're all still on the very leading edge of the adoption of AI integration into the business of law. So here are the benefits. We archive a lot of stuff on the website, and I throw up some passwords because it's a subscriber model. You sign up for a year and you get all this stuff, and hopefully we help you be on that leading edge of integrating AI into your law firm in a responsible, ethical, efficient way, and learn from other firms like yours, how they're training or policies around it. Our clients starting to talk about this. Interesting, interesting. We're trying to help managing partners. Uri, anything else coming up? Next month, we're going to do a program with Nexel on client relationships and using data to get closer to clients. We'll follow up with you with the recording and handouts. Uri, anything else for the good of the order?
No, I've heard great things about the AI community, and it's clearly something we need more of, not less of. But this has been a great program, guys. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, I echo that. Peter, thank you. And Ted,
Thank you.
thank you for being with us and the time you put into the program, your participation today. Hopefully it was fun and rewarding for you as well. And here's our follow-up information, folks. If you want to reach out to any of us directly, we'd be happy to carry on the conversation, answer any questions you might have. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ted.
Sure.
Thank you, Uri. And thank you, everybody, for being with us this afternoon. See you next time.
Thanks,
care.
gentlemen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Bye, everybody.